Now I want to talk a little bit about the Microsoft Teams room experience. So this is what it looks like when you come into the room. You can use all of these systems with the touch monitor, so I can actually come up here and interface with the screen and the buttons on that side. But paired with every single room is a room controller, and we at Poly have two different sized room controllers. So the first one is called the TC8. That stands for Touch Control 8-inch. It's right here. And then we have the TC10 behind it, which is our Touch Control 10-inch. From the front, they look pretty similar, but once we flip them over to the side, that's where we start to see some of their differences. First off, they both are network connected. So the way that you would connect these control panels is that these need to be powered over PoE, over Power over Ethernet. So you're going to take the Ethernet cable, plug it into a network switch or a powered Ethernet port, and as long as these are on the same subnet as your primary network, they will pair over the network seamlessly without any wires connecting the two, and they will receive updates, function as a one system, and that's how you get these connected. But they're a little bit different because, as you can see, the TC8 is bottom heavy. It's only designed to sit tabletop side. It's a little bit smaller in form factor. We don't have any wall mount or glass mount kits for this guy. But when we move into the TC10, you can see that it's got this flat back design here. So these legs, I can actually take these, I can pop them off, I can flip them over, I can get more of a low profile TC10 controller close to the table. I can also choose to wall mount or glass mount this if I so choose. And you'll also notice it's got this lighted indicator on the side here. If you're using the TC10 as a room controller, the lighted indicator will let you know if you're muted or unmuted. It'll glow green or red, but you can also choose to use the TC10 as an optional accessory to the room. So this is currently running a software that is known as a Teams panel. I have this panel set up as a room scheduling display for my Teams room. So what I can do here is I can take this control panel and I can actually mount it outside of my room, and then I can use either this QR system to reserve the room, or I can scroll through the calendar for the day. I can make reservations, I can extend my reservations and interface with that entire schedule directly from this TC10. And added bonus is if the room happens to be available, it will again glow and give me that green indication. So if I'm sitting at my cube, or I'm in the office and I want to poke my head over the top of my cube and look across the office and see which rooms are available, I can actually do that with the use of these lighted indicators. So very powerful device, lots of different features and functionalities, and this really helps drive adoption with conference rooms because people really like to know, what's the schedule for the room. They want to use conference rooms, but sometimes booking through Outlook can be a little unattainable for some people. So this makes it a lot easier to book those rooms. So I have my TC8 running as my primary room controller. Again, you can use the TC10 and it would look exactly identical to this. And I have all my calendar invites for the day. All I have to do to get these calendar invites to pop up in the room is I would just I would set up the room as a room resource, or I would add the calendaring email address for the room to my invite. Those are two ways that you can get these invites to populate in the room. All I do is I come up, I tap the join button, and now I'm entered into my Teams call. It's that simple. And from inside my Teams call, I can actually do a lot of really cool things. So first off, I can see everyone who's in the meeting. I can also see everyone who is invited to the meeting, their status on Teams. I can tap on somebody and request that they join the meeting if they're running a little late. And then I can also invite someone who I didn't previously invite. So maybe I've forgotten to invite Taylor to this meeting. I can, search through the directory for her, or perhaps I can type in her email address and it will send an invite to her. And then I can also use Teams reactions from here. So if I want to raise my hand, if I want to congratulate a coworker on some great news, I can do that directly from the conference room. So there's three different ways that we can share content from a Microsoft Teams room. And the first way is that I can actually use a feature called Do Not Use Audio with my Teams client in order to share content wirelessly into the room. So for this, I've got my HP laptop here. And what I can do is I can tap on the join button for the same meeting that I'm in this room with. So you'll notice that I'm trying to join that engineering team call that I'm in this room with from my computer. Instead of computer audio, you'll notice that Teams defaulted me to do not use audio, and it gives me a little instructional note here that says, you're already in a room with this meeting, why don't we go ahead and mute that microphone and speakers so that once I join into that call, I will have the ability to now whiteboard from my computer. I can share content from this computer. I can interface as myself, but what I'm using as my microphone, camera, and speakers is the in-room system. And what I really love is all of the great collaboration tools that Microsoft has. Like I mentioned, that whiteboarding, that we can actually whiteboard in two different locations. So if this was somebody who was at home, for example, they would be able to say, you know, I think that for today, instead of camera and audio, I would really like to focus on those Microsoft Teams Room Android devices. So I've moved that over there. But if I were somebody who was in the conference room, I can interface with that as well and say, you know, let's go ahead and delete these checkboxes because we haven't gone over that yet. We're not going to need this X over the wrap up and action items. And again, I would also like to emphasize my focus on Android. Maybe I want to discuss budget. I would like to add a note that we need to discuss the budget. So I'm writing that here inside of the conference room. And if we zoom back into my computer, you can see that that's reflected here. So you have that ability to utilize a whiteboard with Microsoft with these conference rooms, as well as someone who is working from their computer, working from home, or a completely different location. So personal favorite feature of mine. So that's just one way that we're able to share that content. The second way is that I can go to the three dots next to my icon on Teams, and I can tap on the cast button. And this allows me to actually push that content hands-free into the room behind me. So I get this menu where it's asking me, what do I want to cast? Do I want to share a screen? Do I want to share a window? All of that. So it's the exact same experience that we're used to when we share content from home. Now, those two wireless content sharing functions that I just shared with you, those are, primarily for people who might be on the same Teams tenant, people who are in the same organization. What would happen if an outside vendor wanted to come on site and share content, or perhaps somebody who just wants to plug in a cable and share content? Well, we still have the ability to utilize a dedicated HDMI content sharing cable here. So I can, for example, and my face is going to look huge here in a second. So I can take this HDMI cable, I can plug it directly into my computer, and that is going to share some content into the room behind me. So now I'm sharing content into that Teams call just over use of that HDMI cable. It's very simple. It's easy for outside vendors or people who, don't want to mess with the wireless content sharing options. They can quickly share that content into the room behind you. And all three of those options, you have the ability to share computer audio as well. So if you're sharing videos, if you're sharing things that require the use of your computer audio, that is all supported as well. Another thing that I wanted to share is your different layout options. So you have the ability to change your layout when you're in the room, whether you just want to see the people, you want to see content and people, just content. You can also turn on a really cool, handy mode called Front Row that shows you sort of a command center-like experience in the room. So if I zoom out here, so what Front Row does is it sort of gives you a command center-like experience in the room where you're able to see lots of different widgets of information on the screen at the same time. Now, I'm the only one in the call, so it looks a little bit boring at the moment. And this looks best when you have two monitors. So you're taking a full use of all the real estate of 2 monitors. So my content is here. I can see the chat box for the meeting. I have a self view here, and then this is where a thumbnail of all of your different participants will go. So they'll go in a little film strip across the bottom of the screen. When you mix in additional monitors, you'll see more information about the meeting, a queue of people who have their hands raised, for example. So this is a really cool dynamic gallery view that Microsoft has enabled that allows us to view, again, multiple widgets of information in the room at one time. So those are some of your layout options. And the last thing I want to touch upon is utilizing a secondary camera with these Teams rooms. As a reminder, you can use a second USB camera on all three of our Android devices, with the exception of the Studio X30, the small room device. So this is where I would go to switch to a secondary camera if I had one plugged in. And a new feature that Microsoft has just implemented is if I scroll down, I can switch between what kind of tracking mode I would like the camera to be in. So do I want it to frame everyone who's in the room? I can select that as my option. Do I want it to just frame the person who's talking at that moment? That's what's selected right now. And I can also choose composite, which is a feature that we at Poly call people framing, that we'll get into towards the camera and audio portion of the demo. All right. So if we want to join an ad hoc call, because as we know, oftentimes we forget to invite the room and we want to join those ad hoc calls. There's a couple different ways that we can do that. Now, the first and easiest way is that I can click on join with a meeting ID, where then I can type in my meeting credentials, my passcode. I can also make a meeting directly from the room itself by tapping on the meet button. And that will just create a Teams meeting that I can then invite anybody to. And the last way is that if I want to just share content into the room, I just want to share something to the monitors without even needing to be in a call, I can either wirelessly cast, or again, I can use this HDMI cable, plug it straight into my computer, and share content straight to the monitors. What if I need to join a non-Teams meeting? So if I want to join a non-Teams meeting, there are 2 different paths that I can take. And the first is you can use a built-in feature from Microsoft called Direct Guest Join. So Direct Guest Join today is going to work with Zoom and WebEx. And what essentially you do is you invite the room to that Zoom and WebEx call. There's no additional licenses required. You don't need, a license from those respective companies. All you have to do is turn the feature on internally. And once I get into that call, you can see now that we've got the Zoom logo in the upper right-hand corner, and you can also see the different features that I have here. So once I'm in these Zoom and WebEx calls, when I'm using Direct Guest Join, I'll have the ability to be seen, be heard. I can see the other participants. I can view their content. The one thing that you will not be able to do is you will not be able to take this HDMI cable, the dedicated room HDMI cable, and share content into that Zoom call. You'll need to join from that respective platform from your personal computer and share from there. But if you, for example, had a meeting where maybe you have a bit more responsibilities, maybe you're hosting one of these calls, or you just want to use your own device, we also have the ability to plug in our computers directly to these systems and use them in bring your own device mode. So I'm going to zoom out to the monitors here. There's 2 different ways that we can get to this device mode. And the first is very simple. I've got 2 cables out on the tabletop that are here and ready for people to use. And the first one is my HDMI content cable. It's the same one that you would use if you wanted to, present onto the monitors. But the second cable is a USB cable. Now, it doesn't matter if the USB cable is A or C or adapter, computer side, but it does require it to use the USB-C port on my codec side. So a small caveat there. So I've plugged in that USB cable, and you can see that the system automatically flipped into what we at Poly call device mode. This is a built-in USB pass-through mode that we have developed to allow people to join their computers into any kind of call while leveraging the in-room camera, microphone, and speakers. So I've opened my laptop here. I have the camera application open, and I can come over here and I can actually wave my hand in front of the camera. You can see that all of my camera tracking, my audio innovations, all the goodness that Poly has baked into our devices is still going to work even though we're using this in USB pass-through. But now what I can do is I can join a Zoom meeting, a WebEx meeting, a Google Meet meeting, a Go-to-Room meeting. I could come in here with a MacBook and I could FaceTime somebody. All I'm doing is I'm controlling the camera, microphone, and speakers with the use of that USB cable, and with the HDMI, I can now have my laptop come up over the monitors. So with those two functionalities, you're covered end to end for any number of meetings that you might come across. This doesn't require use of any special software or downloads or drivers. Anybody can really just kind of come in, plug in those two cables, and be able to run any meeting that they want without any special licenses, etc. So that's device mode. After a certain period of time, which I believe I've set mine to be about 20 seconds, we'll see the screen go from this device mode screen back into being a Microsoft Teams room. So as people enter and leave the room, once they use it in device mode, it goes back into a screen that they're familiar with, and that experience is consistent across the entire portfolio. So it doesn't matter if you're going to a small room, a large room, etc. It'll all be exactly the same. Now, people ask us all the time about leaving computers in the room, or if they want to do a single cable for device mode, right? Where they want to plug in that USB cable and that HDMI cable into a single adapter. How do we go from sharing content versus device mode? So it's pretty simple. If you want to do it that way, once you plug in that cable, you can actually exit out of that device mode screen. So if you had seen earlier, so once you plug in those cables, if you only want to share content, you can actually hit the exit button here, and then you don't assume control of the camera, microphone, and speakers. You're just sharing your screen. But if you want to go into the device mode, and maybe you have a computer that's constantly plugged into your system, and you want to manually switch into that device mode, we do have a secret menu that you can swipe in from the right. You can tap on device mode to automatically flip yourself into device mode. And you can see here that you have all your settings here. I can activate a different camera menu here. And then you also, underneath the secret menu, waiting for it to go back here. Underneath the secret menu, even inside of Teams calls, I can also access a native Poly camera control menu here. So this menu allows me to toggle my tracking on and off, and I can use one of 10 presets that I can set by manually pan-tilt zooming my camera around the room. And I can access these presets even if I'm in a Teams call, even if I'm in device mode, even if I'm direct guest joined into a Zoom call, I will still have access to this camera control menu.